The Unified Galactic Council prided itself on many things: diplomatic finesse, technological advancement, and most importantly, the ability to remain calm in any situation. Today, however, was testing that last quality to its absolute limits. Admiral Zorb, a tall, spindly being with 4 arms and skin the color of a fading bruise, stared at the holographic display with all 3 of his eyes widened in disbelief. "Lieutenant PX, please tell me you're seeing something different than I am," Zorb said, his upper arms massaging his temples while his lower ones frantically tapped commands into the console. Lieutenant PX, a shorter, rounder creature, whose species resembled something between a pangolin and a disco ball, swiveled her sensory nodes toward the display. "I wish I could say yes, Admiral," she chittered nervously. "But according to our scans, that is indeed a warship entering Council space. And it's not in our database." The ship in question was, by Council standards, an absolute monstrosity. Where galactic vessels favored sleek, organic curves and harmonious design, this thing looked like someone had taken a rectangular block of metal, attached engines to it, and then decided to stick guns, so many guns on every available surface, as an afterthought. Primitive design, excessive weaponry, complete disregard for aesthetic principles, Zorb muttered. Must be from an emerging spacefaring civilization. Classification status. Peaks's scales rippled as she pulled up the data. Unknown species from the 3rd planet of a yellow dwarf system in Sector 8472. They call themselves humans, and their planet is designated as Earth. Earth? Zorb's face tentacles curled in amusement. They named their planet Dirt? Charming. Well, no matter. Emerging species are always a bit rough around the edges. Their first venture into Council space will be a learning experience. Open communication channels and prepare the standard first contact protocols. The usual welcome to the galaxy spiel. PX complied, her claws dancing across the holographic interface. "Channel open, Admiral." Zorb straightened his ceremonial sash, cleared his throat equivalent, and began the speech that had welcomed hundreds of species to the galactic community over the millennia. "Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Zorb of the Unified Galactic Council. On behalf of the 3,427 sentient species of the known galaxy, I extend greetings, and hi there. This is Captain Ellie Martinez of the UNS Reckless Abandon. We were wondering when someone would pick up. Been broadcasting on all frequencies for the past hour." The casual interruption left Zorb momentarily speechless. The voice was accompanied by a visual feed showing a bipedal creature with dark fur on top of its head, tied back in what appeared to be some kind of restraint. Its face was remarkably plain, just 2 eyes, a protruding nose and a mouth full of flat teeth. No tentacles, no sensory nodes, not even a decent set of antennae. Disappointing. "Yes, welcome Captain Martinez. We detected your vessel and cool. Listen, we're just passing through on our way to the Epsilon Eridani system. Got a colony there that needs some supplies. Mind if we cut through your space? Promise we won't make a mess." Zorb blinked rapidly, his cultural sensitivity training completely failing him. "Captain, I don't think you understand. This is your species' first contact with the Unified Galactic Council. This is a historic moment that should be marked with appropriate ceremony, and, oh right, first contact protocols and all that jazz." The human's face broke into what Zorb would later learn was called a grin. "Sorry about that. We've met a few species already on our way out here. The Blorgs were particularly friendly once we figured out that what looked like an attack was actually their version of a handshake." "You've already made contact with other species," PX blurted, abandoning protocol. "Handful, yeah. Most of them aren't part of your council thing, I guess. Look, if this is a big deal for you folks, we can do the formal stuff. Got any particular rituals you need us to follow? Just a heads up, we don't do blood sacrifices, and our ambassador has a shellfish allergy." Zorb's face tentacles went limp in shock. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. There should be awe, reverence, maybe a bit of fear, not this casual disregard for one of the most significant moments in a species' history. And what was more alarming, he squinted at the readings on the vessel again, was that the ship was absolutely bristling with weapons systems, most of which the Council scanners couldn't even classify. For an emerging species, that level of military technology was concerning. "Captain Martinez," Zorb said, trying to regain control of the situation, "perhaps we should arrange for your vessel to dock at our station so we can properly welcome you to Council space and discuss diplomatic matters." The human took a sip from a container and nodded. "Sounds good to me. Fair warning though, last station we docked at wasn't built for a ship our size. Bit of a fender bender, insurance nightmare." As the human vessel adjusted course toward the station, Lieutenant PX leaned close to Zorb and whispered, Admiral, should we be concerned about all those weapons? Zorb watched the ungainly ship lumber toward them with all the grace of a drugged Thulian mammoth. I'm not sure, Lieutenant, he replied quietly, but I have a feeling the Council's guidelines on integrating new species are about to get a significant update. Docking procedures with the human vessel went about as smoothly as teaching a Plutonian slug beast to tap dance. The UNS Reckless Abandon was simply too large and unwieldy for the elegant Council docking mechanisms, and its hull composition confused the automated systems. Maybe if you just let us handle it, Captain Martinez suggested over the comms, sounding amused. Our pilot's pretty good at parallel parking. Admiral Zorb reluctantly agreed, and watched in horror as the human ship executed a series of maneuvers that, while effective, violated at least 12 different Council safety protocols. The vessel finally settled into place with a concerning metallic groan that echoed throughout the station. There we go, Martinez's voice chirped. Coming aboard now. Hope you don't mind if I bring my senior crew. Before Zorb could answer, the airlock hissed open, revealing Captain Martinez in person, significantly shorter than Zorb had imagined, flanked by 4 other humans of various shapes, sizes and colors. Heya, Captain Martinez extended a 5-fingered appendage toward Zorb. Great to meet you face to faces. How many eyes is that? 3. Cool. Zorb hesitantly extended his upper right arm, unsure of the proper protocol. Martinez grabbed it firmly, and moved it up and down several times before releasing it. This is my crew, she continued, gesturing to the others. That's Commander Rex Jackson, tactical officer and my right-hand man. A tall, broad human, with dark skin, and a completely hairless head nodded curtly. Admiral, the redhead is Lieutenant Commander Freya Volkov, our engineer. She can fix anything with duct tape and spite. A smaller human with fiery orange head fur rolled her eyes. That was one time, Captain. I've since upgraded to carbon nanofiber tape. The nervous-looking one is Dr. Theo Lang, our science officer and linguist. A pale human, with circular visual aids perched on its nose, offered a small wave. Fascinating physiological structure you have, Admiral. The evolutionary implications of triple eye symmetry are— Not now, Theo, Martinez interrupted. And lastly, this is Lieutenant Danny Quinn, our pilot and the reason we still have a ship despite my best efforts to the contrary. The final human, with messy brown fur and a permanently amused expression, gave a lazy salute. I prefer Professional Crasher as my title, thanks. Zorb stared at the bizarre collection of beings before him. They were so casual, so utterly unimpressed by their surroundings. Even new species that had achieved interstellar travel usually displayed some degree of awe when first boarding a Council station. Welcome aboard Diplomatic Hub Epsilon, Zorb finally managed. Lieutenant Pix will show you to the formal reception area where— Any chance we could get a coffee first? Martinez asked, looking around hopefully. Been on synthetic stuff for weeks, our replicator can't get the taste right. Pix looked to Zorb with confusion. Coffee, it's a beverage, Dr. Lang supplied helpfully. Made from roasted seeds of the coffea plant containing caffeine, a mild stimulant that helps us function optimally. You require stimulants to function? Pix asked, alarmed. Require? No. Prefer? Absolutely, Commander Jackson said with a slight smile. Especially when dealing with new diplomatic situations. Zorb's face tentacles twitched in mild distress. I'm afraid we don't have this coffee. Perhaps our synthesizers could— Never mind, Martinez waved dismissively. We brought our own emergency stash. Theo, do the thing. Dr. Lang produced a small container from his uniform pocket, opened it, and the humans all inhaled deeply, their faces transforming into expressions of what Zorb assumed was pleasure. Ah, that's the good stuff, Martinez sighed. Just the smell helps. Anyway, you were saying something about a reception. Yes, Zorb said, struggling to maintain his diplomatic composure. The Council representatives are awaiting your arrival, if you'll follow Lieutenant Pix. As they walked through the station's pristine corridors, Zorb couldn't help but notice how the humans kept stopping to point at things, take pictures with small devices, and occasionally laugh for no apparent reason. They seemed perpetually distracted, yet somehow alert. Your station's pretty swanky, Lieutenant Quinn commented, running a hand along a wall. Not very defensible though, too many windows and your life support systems are way too exposed. We don't design our diplomatic stations with defense as a priority, Zorb replied stiffly. Huh. Quinn exchanged glances with Commander Jackson. Weird choice, but okay. Oh man, this would make an excellent meme, Lieutenant Commander Volkov muttered, capturing an image of a particularly elegant art installation. Caption: when the barista gets your order wrong but you're too polite to say anything. The other humans erupted into laughter while Zorb looked on in confusion. I apologize, but what is a meme? Pix asked. 5 human faces turned to her with expressions ranging from shock to delight. Oh honey, Martinez said with a grin that bordered on predatory. You have so much to learn about humanity. Theo, give our new friends the short version. Dr. Lang cleared his throat. A meme is a unit of cultural information spread through imitation, often humorous in nature and typically involving an image with text that, "It's funnier if we just show you," Volkov interrupted, holding up her device. The image displayed was completely incomprehensible to Zorb, some kind of small furry creature with text that read, "I can has cheeseburger." The humans all nodded appreciatively as if this made perfect sense. I don't understand, Zorb admitted. That's okay, Martinez said, patting his lower arm sympathetically. It took the Arcturians 3 weeks to get it, and they have collective consciousness. Now, about that reception, anyone important I should avoid insulting accidentally. I'm told my humor doesn't always translate well. Zorb felt a headache forming in all 3 of his brains. Somehow, he suspected that the arrival of humans in council space was going to complicate everything, and the strangest part was, they didn't even seem to realize it. The Grand Council chamber was designed to inspire awe in visitors. Its soaring ceilings captured and amplified the perfect acoustics needed for the 13 primary council languages. Holographic displays showcased the wonders of thousands of worlds, while the central podium, surrounded by concentric rings of seating for various diplomatic delegations, was illuminated by light gathered from the galaxy's most spectacular nebulae. The effect on the humans was less than anticipated. Kinda reminds me of that casino in Vegas, Lieutenant Quinn whispered loudly as they entered. Nah, more like the United Nations but with better lighting, Commander Jackson replied, not bothering to lower his voice. Captain Martinez was staring at her handheld device. Anyone getting network access in here? I promise to live stream this for the folks back home. Zorb felt his face tentacles curl in mortification. The Grand Council was already assembled, representatives from the 13 founding species, along with at least 50 ambassadors from other member worlds. All eyes, sensory nodes, and various perception organs were focused on the human delegation, which was currently taking selfies with the ceremonial guardian statues. If I could have your attention, Zorb hissed urgently. High Chancellor Nux Vobis is about to commence the welcome ceremony. This ritual has remained unchanged for 12,000 years. Cool, Martinez said, tucking her device away. We're ready. Do we need to stand anywhere specific? Before Zorb could answer, a deep resonant tone echoed through the chamber. High Chancellor Nux Vobis, an imposing figure resembling a cross between a jellyfish and a sequoia tree, floated toward the central podium, trailing luminescent tendrils that symbolized the interconnectedness of all sentient life. Representatives of humanity, the High Chancellor began, voice modulator translating their vibrations into audible speech. We welcome you to the embrace of the unified Galactic Council. For eons we have guided emerging species into the cosmic community, sharing knowledge, resources, and— Excuse me, Dr. Lang interrupted, raising his hand like a student in class. When you say eons, could you be more specific? Because Earth's definition of an eon is approximately— Commander Jackson subtly elbowed the scientist, who adjusted his visual aids and mumbled an apology. The High Chancellor's tendrils pulsed in what Zorb recognized as irritation, but they continued. As I was saying, the Council extends formal recognition to humanity, and invites your species to begin the observation period, during which your civilization will demonstrate its readiness for full membership through peaceful observation period. Martinez interrupted this time. What exactly does that entail? Zorb quickly stepped forward. Captain, please, these questions can be addressed after the ceremony. Actually, I'd like to know now, Martinez said with a smile that somehow made Zorb extremely nervous. Because it sounds suspiciously like probation, and we're not really big fans of being monitored. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Interrupting the welcome address was unprecedented. Some species had evolved specific physiological features just to ensure they couldn't accidentally make sounds during the ceremony. The High Chancellor's tendrils flashed a dangerous ultraviolet. The observation period is standard protocol for all new species. It typically lasts between 50 and 100 of your Earth years. The human delegation exchanged glances. Yeah, that's not going to work for us, Martinez said pleasantly. We've already got colonies in 3 systems and trade agreements with the Blorgs and the Zentari. We're not looking to have our expansion limited while you folks decide if we're worthy." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Zentari were notorious for their isolationism, and had rejected council membership centuries ago. That they would trade with humans, a completely unknown species, was shocking. High Chancellor Nux Vobis descended slightly, a sign of increased attention. "You have relations with the Zentari collective?" "Oh sure," Lieutenant Commander Volkov chimed in. "They love our music, especially something called heavy metal. Apparently it resonates with their crystalline physiologies." Sarb felt the diplomatic situation spiraling out of control. The humans were completely disregarding the ceremonial structure that had maintained peace among thousands of species. "Perhaps," he suggested desperately, "we could move to the exchange of cultural tokens." "Great idea," Martinez agreed. She reached into a pocket and produced a small object. "We brought this for you, Chancellor. It's called a fidget spinner, very popular on Earth." She placed the trinket on the sacred offering platform, where gifts of immeasurable cultural significance had been presented throughout galactic history. Items like the last seed of extinct worlds, memory crystals containing the collective wisdom of ancient civilizations, and artifacts of profound spiritual importance. And now, a spinning piece of plastic. "You just hold it between your fingers and spin it," Martinez demonstrated. "It's supposed to help with focus and stress relief." The High Chancellor's tendrils coiled in what could only be described as bewilderment. "This is your cultural token." "Well, we also brought coffee beans," Martinez offered. "But your Admiral guy said you don't have the equipment to brew it." "Actually," Lieutenant Quinn added helpfully, "we've got some whiskey too if that's more your speed." "Nothing says peace between worlds like sharing a drink, right?" The chamber had gone deathly quiet. Even the translation algorithms seemed to be processing the humans' words with extra care, as if checking for errors. High Chancellor Nux Vobis slowly extended a tendril toward the fidget spinner. With obvious reluctance, they set it spinning. "Thank you for this token of your culture," they said formally, though Zorb could detect the uncertainty in their vibrations. "No problem," Martinez grinned. "So, about this observation period. I think we'd prefer to fast-track our membership. Our Secretary General authorized me to negotiate terms." Another scandalous murmur swept the chamber. Negotiations were never conducted during welcome ceremonies. They followed months of preliminary discussions and cultural exchanges. "Captain Martinez," Zorb interjected, "the protocols are very clear about." "Yeah, about those protocols," Martinez said, her tone still friendly but with a new edge. "We've reviewed the Council Charter, thanks for making that publicly accessible by the way, and notice there's no actual requirement for an observation period. It's described as customaries but not mandatory." Dr. Lang nodded enthusiastically. Section 7, Paragraph 3 specifically states that emerging species of demonstrated technological capability and peaceful intent may petition for accelerated consideration. "We're simply exercising that right." Zorb stared at the humans in disbelief. They had actually read the charter. Most species took decades to fully translate and comprehend the document. The High Chancellor's tendrils had gone completely still, a sign of either deep thought or impending diplomatic catastrophe. "Humanity appears to be unusually prepared for this meeting," they observed. "Perhaps we should adjourn to the negotiation chamber and discuss your petition." "Sounds great," Martinez said cheerfully, seemingly oblivious to the protocol earthquake she had just triggered. "Lead the way." As the humans followed the High Chancellor out of the ceremonial chamber, Lieutenant Quinn pausing to give a thumbs up to a particularly bewildered ambassador, Zorb felt a strange sensation settling in his digestive cavities. It wasn't just that the humans had disrupted a ceremony unchanged for millennia. It wasn't even their casual disregard for hierarchy and protocol. It was the growing suspicion that somehow these bizarre creatures had just managed to gain the upper hand in their first official contact with the most powerful political entity in the known galaxy. And they had done it with a fidget spinner and a regulation loophole. The negotiation chamber was considerably less ornate than the Grand Council Hall, designed for functionality rather than ceremony. The humans seemed more comfortable here, immediately spreading out around the circular table and examining the built-in data terminals with undisguised curiosity. High Chancellor Nux Vobis had called for a brief recess, ostensibly to gather the appropriate negotiation team, but Zorb suspected they were actually trying to process the diplomatic whiplash inflicted by the humans. "So," Captain Martinez said, leaning back in her chair and propping her boots on the pristine table surface, "how long do these things usually take? We've got a schedule to keep." Zorb's eye stalks twitched with irritation. "Captain, Please understand that you've already circumvented diplomatic procedures that have been in place for thousands of years. The Council isn't accustomed to improvising. Martinez shrugged. Life's too short for red tape, Admiral. Well, human life anyway. How long do your people live? The average Exarillion lifespan is approximately 450 of your Earth years. Zorb replied stiffly. See, that explains a lot. Martinez nodded sagely. When you've got centuries to kill, a 50-year observation period probably seems reasonable. We're lucky if we hit 100, so we tend to move faster. Before Zorb could respond, the chamber doors slid open. High Chancellor Nux Vobis floated in, accompanied by representatives from each of the Council's founding species. Their expressions, at least those Zorb could interpret, ranged from curious to openly hostile. Representatives of humanity, the High Chancellor began. We have assembled the Expedited Integration Committee to consider your petition for accelerated Council membership. Before we proceed, however, we would like to understand more about your civilization's technological capabilities, especially regarding your warship. Commander Jackson straightened in his seat. The UNS Reckless Abandon is a Horizon-class patrol vessel. It's actually one of our smaller warships. A ripple of unease passed through the Council representatives. Smaller? Asked a Vixillian delegate, their quills rising in alarm. Your species maintains larger military vessels. Oh sure, Lieutenant Quinn said with a casual wave. The Abandon is basically a corvette. Our actual battleships are about 10 times the size. Dr. Lang adjusted his visual aids. To clarify, the Horizon-class vessels were initially designed for deep space exploration and scientific research. The armaments were added later as a precautionary measure after encounters with non-sentient space fauna in the Tau Ceti system. Space fauna? Zorb asked, momentarily distracted. Giant space squids, Martinez said with a grimace. Mean suckers. Nearly lost a colony ship before we figured out they were territorial rather than malevolent. The Council representatives exchanged glances that Zorb recognized as universal concern. And your method of dealing with these space squids? A Firian counselor asked, her gelatinous form pulsing anxiously. Turned out they hate certain sound frequencies, Lieutenant Commander Volkov offered. We blast heavy metal music at them now. Works like a charm. They're actually quite friendly once you get to know them. You befriended the hostile space creatures that attacked your vessels. The High Chancellor's tendrils twisted in confusion. Sure, Martinez shrugged.
Why not?
First contact doesn't always have to end in fighting. The irony of this statement, coming from the captain of a heavily armed warship, was apparently lost on the humans. Before the conversation could devolve further, a blaring alarm cut through the chamber. The central holographic display flashed to life, showing a tactical readout of nearby space. High Chancellor, Lieutenant PYX burst into the room, her scales flashing distress patterns. Long-range sensors have detected a Voxarian raider fleet entering the system. They've already disabled our outer warning beacons. The Council representatives erupted in panic. The Voxarians, gasped the Firian counselor. How many vessels? 27 warships, PYX reported grimly, including 3 dreadnoughts. We must evacuate immediately, the High Chancellor declared. Alert all diplomatic vessels, and begin emergency protocols. Through the chaos, Zorb noticed that the humans weren't panicking. Instead, they were gathered around Martinez, looking at something on her handheld device. Excuse me, Zorb interrupted. I don't think you understand the severity of the situation. The Voxarians are the most aggressive species in the sector. They've been raiding Council territories for centuries. Yeah, we're looking at their approach vector now, Martinez said calmly, showing Zorb her device's screen. It somehow displayed real-time tactical data that should have been accessible only to Council military systems. They're using a standard ravenous swarm formation. Classic intimidation tactic. How are you accessing this data? Zorb demanded. Commander Jackson shrugged. Your security protocols need updating. Anyway, those Voxarian ships look interesting. Similar design philosophy to the Zentari, but clearly optimized for speed over durability. This is not an academic exercise, Zorb snapped. The station's defenses cannot withstand a Voxarian fleet of this size. We need to evacuate now. Martinez glanced at her crew, then back at Zorb. Or we could just handle it. The chamber went silent. Handle? A fleet of 27 Voxarian warships? The High Chancellor asked, tendrils twitching in disbelief. With one vessel? Well, the Abandon's just sitting out there, Martinez said with a shrug. Seems a waste not to use it. Captain, Zorb said slowly, as if explaining to a child, the Voxarians have been the scourge of this sector for generations. Their technology is advanced, their tactics ruthless, they show no mercy. Martinez stood up, stretching casually. Look, we've got about 18 minutes before they're in firing range. You folks can evacuate if you want, but we're going to engage. Consider it our application for council membership, practical demonstration and all that. This is madness, a Vexillian delegate sputtered. You cannot possibly, Admiral Zorb, Lieutenant PYX interrupted. The human vessel is powering up its engines. Zorb turned back to the humans, who were already heading for the door. Captain Martinez, I must insist. Don't worry, Admiral, Martinez said with a wink. We've got this. Rex, Battle Plan Delta 7. Commander Jackson nodded grimly. With a side of Echo 3 for dessert. Perfect. Martinez grinned. Dr. Lang, you're welcome to stay here and continue the diplomatic talks if you want. The scientist shook his head. And misdocumenting our first engagement with a new hostile species. Not a chance, Captain. As the humans filed out, Lieutenant Quinn paused briefly beside the stunned council representatives. Might want to reinforce your viewports, he suggested helpfully. Things are about to get loud out there. After they left, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. They're going to get themselves killed, the Firian counselor finally said. Perhaps, the High Chancellor replied slowly, their tendrils swaying thoughtfully. But I find myself curious to see what happens. Zorb stared at the tactical display as the UNS Reckless Abandon broke from its docking position and accelerated toward the incoming Voxarian fleet. The human vessel was outnumbered nearly 30-1, facing an enemy that had terrorized the Council for centuries. And yet, watching the humans' casual confidence, Zorb couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that it might be the Voxarians who were in trouble. The diplomatic hub's observation deck had never been so crowded. Council representatives from dozens of worlds huddled around viewports and holographic displays, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination as the lone human vessel approached the Voxarian armada. They've gone completely silent, Lieutenant PYX reported, her scales shifting to anxious patterns. No response to hails. Perhaps they've reconsidered their foolhardy plan, a Vexillian delegate suggested hopefully. Admiral Zorb studied the tactical display, his three eyes narrowed in concentration. No, they're still on an intercept course, but they've reduced power to most systems. They appear to be drifting. The UNS Reckless Abandon had indeed cut engines, and was now coasting toward the Voxarian fleet, appearing for all intents and purposes like a derelict vessel. Its running lights were dark, weapons systems powered down, presenting a profile that barely registered on sensors. What are they doing? The High Chancellor wondered aloud. Surrendering? I doubt that very much, Zorb muttered. The Voxarian fleet continued its approach, apparently unconcerned by the single vessel. Their formation remained tight, a wall of destructive power that had broken through Council defenses countless times before. Suddenly, the communications system crackled to life. Diplomatic hub, this is Captain Martinez, came the human's voice, sounding oddly cheerful. Just checking, your observation deck's viewports are rated for high-intensity light flashes, right? Zorb blinked in confusion. Yes, but great, you might want to tell everyone to brace themselves. Things are about to get interesting. Martinez out. Before anyone could respond, the human ship suddenly flared to life. Every system powered up simultaneously, and the vessel accelerated at a rate that should have been impossible given its mass. They're broadcasting something, PYX reported, her voice rising in confusion. On all frequencies. It's audio, music? A thunderous sound filled the command center, as the human's transmission was automatically routed through the speakers. Primal aggressive sounds, driving percussion, wailing electronic instruments, and a human voice screaming about a highway to hell. What is that? The Firian counselor gasped, her gelatinous form quivering with each beat. Classic rock, Zorb said absently, remembering Lieutenant Commander Volkov's earlier comment about human music. ACC if I'm not mistaken. Everyone stared at him. May have accessed some human cultural databases, he admitted sheepishly. On the tactical display, the UNS Reckless Abandon was now hurtling toward the center of the Voxarian formation at maximum velocity, the deafening music still broadcasting on all frequencies. The Voxarian ships seemed momentarily confused by this unorthodox approach, their tight formation wavering slightly. They're going to ram the lead dreadnought, someone shouted. But at the last possible moment, the human vessel executed a maneuver that Zorb would have sworn violated several laws of physics. It skimmed just above the Voxarian flagship, rolling to present its ventral weapons array, and then chaos erupted. The human ship unleashed a barrage of weapons fire unlike anything Zorb had ever witnessed. Not the precise surgical strikes favored by Council military doctrine, but a wild, seemingly random pattern of destructive energy that splashed across multiple targets simultaneously. What kind of targeting algorithm is that? PYX wondered, her professional curiosity momentarily overriding her alarm. I don't think they're using one, Zorb replied, watching in amazement as the human vessel continued its erratic course through the heart of the Voxarian formation. They appear to be firing, manually. This was unheard of in modern space combat. The calculations required to hit moving targets in three-dimensional space while also moving were simply too complex for organic brains to process in real time. And yet, the humans were scoring hit after hit. The Voxarian ships, accustomed to enemies that followed predictable tactical doctrines, seemed utterly confounded by the Reckless Abandon's wild maneuvers. Their formation was breaking apart as they tried to track the human vessel, which changed direction so frequently and dramatically that it resembled nothing so much as an erratic insect. And through it all, the humans kept broadcasting their aggressive music, now shifted to something called Welcome to the Jungle. They're using acoustic warfare, the High Chancellor realized, tendrils waving in fascination. The music isn't just for their own benefit, it's disrupting Voxarian communications. Zorb nodded slowly, remembering the humans' casual mention of using music against space squids. Psychological warfare combined with unpredictable attack patterns. It's actually brilliant. On the tactical display, several smaller Voxarian vessels were already drifting, their systems disabled by precision strikes from the human ship. The larger dreadnoughts were attempting to coordinate a counterattack, but the Reckless Abandon refused to hold still long enough for their heavy weapons to lock on. They're executing something called a Crazy Ivan, PYX reported, apparently having also studied human terminology. No, wait, now they're doing a bootlegger reverse. I don't even understand how their inertial dampeners are handling these maneuvers. A collective gasp rose from the observation deck as one of the Voxarian dreadnoughts unleashed its main weapon, a devastating particle beam that could slice through conventional shields like tissue paper. The beam cut across space, heading directly for the human vessel. Direct hit. Someone shouted. But when the blinding light faded, the UNS Reckless Abandon was still there, a section of its hull glowing angry red but otherwise intact. How? The Firian counselor whispered. Nothing survives a direct hit from a Voxarian particle lance. As if in answer, the communications system crackled again. In case anyone's wondering, came Lieutenant Commander Volkov's voice, sounding irritatingly calm despite the battle raging around her. That's what happens when you combine carbon nanofiber hull plating with good old-fashioned Russian engineering. Also, we're kind of pissed off now. The music changed again, something called Master of Puppets, and the human vessel's attack pattern shifted from erratic to downright predatory. They were no longer evading, they were hunting. With surgical precision that belied their earlier chaotic movements, the Reckless Abandon targeted the damaged dreadnought's propulsion systems, weapons arrays, and finally its command center. The massive Voxarian vessel went dark, drifting helplessly in space. They disabled it, Zorb realized. They could have destroyed it, but they chose to disable it instead. The remaining Voxarian ships were now breaking formation entirely, some attempting to regroup while others began to retreat. Their coordinated attack had devolved into individual survival efforts, something Zorb had never witnessed in centuries of Voxarian raids. Hub Command, this is Captain Martinez, the communications system announced cheerfully over the still blaring music. We've convinced the lead dreadnought to surrender, the others seem to be reconsidering their life choices. Any particular requests for how we proceed? The observation deck fell silent, every being staring at the tactical display in disbelief. One human ship had just effectively neutralized the most feared raiding force in the sector, using tactics that no Council military strategist would ever have conceived. High Chancellor Nux Vobis floated forward, their tendrils waving in what Zorb now recognized as profound amazement. Captain Martinez, they said carefully, the Council would be grateful if you could encourage the remaining Voxarian vessels to depart our space immediately. Roger that, Martinez replied. We'll give them a proper send-off. Stand by. The human vessel accelerated again, positioning itself between the retreating Voxarians and the diplomatic hub. With a final barrage of weapons fire, carefully aimed to miss but close enough to make a point, the UNS Reckless Abandon herded the remaining raiders toward the system's edge. As the music finally faded, and the tactical display showed the Voxarian fleet in full retreat, Zorb found himself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion. It took him several moments to identify it. It was awe. High Chancellor, he said quietly, I believe the humans' application for accelerated council membership may warrant serious consideration. The High Chancellor's tendrils pulsed with agreement. Indeed, Admiral, and perhaps a reconsideration of our approach to galactic security as well. As the observation deck erupted in excited discussion, Zorb continued to watch the tactical display. The human vessel was towing the disabled Voxarian dreadnought back toward the station, broadcasting yet another piece of music, something about being the champions. Somehow, Zorb suspected that the galaxy was about to become a very different place. 3 hours after what was already being called the Battle of Diplomatic Hub Epsilon, the Grand Council chamber had been hastily converted into something resembling a victory celebration. Representatives from dozens of worlds crowded around the human crew, offering congratulations, asking technical questions about their combat tactics, and in the case of several species, requesting copies of their battle music playlist. Captain Martinez sat at the central table, boots propped up as usual, nursing a cup of what she had repeatedly assured concerned council medical staff was just coffee, not liquid courage. Commander Jackson stood at parade rest behind her, his expression carefully neutral, but with the unmistakable satisfaction of a military officer whose mission had gone exceedingly well. High Chancellor Nux Vobis floated at the head of the table, their tendrils now displaying the iridescent blue patterns of formal negotiation. In light of recent events, the Chancellor began, the Council has convened an emergency session to consider humanity's petition for accelerated membership status. Cool, Martinez nodded, taking another sip. Take your time. We've still got to figure out what to do with that Voxarian dreadnought we captured. Lieutenant Commander Volkov is practically drooling over their propulsion system. As if on cue, Volkov's voice came through Martinez's communicator. Captain, you won't believe this. Their engines use a quantum fluctuation matrix that's eerily similar to our prototype designs. It's like they stole our blueprints, but they couldn't have, because we've never met them before, and our designs are classified. And breathe, Freya, Martinez interrupted with a grin. You can reverse engineer their toys later. I'm in the middle of something diplomatic. The High Chancellor's tendrils rippled with what might have been amusement. Your engineer's enthusiasm is noted. However, regarding the captured vessel by council law, it should be impounded and studied by our military research division. Martinez and Jackson exchanged glances. With all due respect, Chancellor, Martinez said, her casual tone taking on a slight edge. That ship surrendered to us. Under maritime law, which we've extended to space because why not? Salvage rights belong to the capturing vessel. This is not a matter of salvage. A Vexillian delegate protested. The Voxarians have plagued our sectors for generations. Their technology must be studied to defend against future incursions. Oh, we're happy to share our findings, Martinez assured them, waving her coffee cup expansively. Knowledge wants to be free and all that, but our engineers get first crack at it. Admiral Zorb, who had been silently observing the exchange, stepped forward. Perhaps a compromise. A joint research team, human and council scientists working together to study the Voxarian vessel. Martinez considered this for a moment, then nodded. I can live with that. But Commander Jackson heads the security detail for the research team. Agreed, the High Chancellor said quickly, before any further objections could be raised. Now regarding your petition for council membership. Dr. Lang, who had been conspicuously quiet since returning from the battle, adjusting his notes on a datapad, finally looked up. Actually, Chancellor, after reviewing the council charter more thoroughly, I believe humanity might be better served by a different arrangement. The council representatives leaned forward, suddenly wary. What kind of arrangement? Zorb asked carefully. An alliance rather than membership, Lang explained, adjusting his visual aids. Full council membership would require humanity to adhere to all council regulations regarding military deployments, technological development, expansion protocols, basically a lot of red tape. Martinez interrupted. No offense, but you folks have some pretty restrictive policies. We're not big fans of being told where we can go and what we can build. That is precisely the point of council oversight, the Firian counselor objected. To ensure that no species destabilizes the careful balance we've maintained. Lieutenant Quinn, who had been entertaining a group of junior diplomats with embellished stories of the battle, wandered back to the table. Yeah, and how'd that careful balance work out with the Voxarians? They've been raiding your worlds for centuries, and you've been what? Filing strongly worded complaints. An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Quinn, Commander Jackson said quietly, diplomatic tact. Sorry, the pilot shrugged, not looking particularly apologetic. But it's true, sometimes you need folks willing to shoot first and negotiate later. High Chancellor Nux Vobis's tendrils undulated thoughtfully. Your point, while indelicately expressed, has merit. The Council's approach to the Voxarian threat has been ineffective. Here's what we propose, Martinez said, sitting up straight for perhaps the first time since arriving. An alliance. Humanity maintains its independence, but coordinates with the Council on matters of mutual interest, especially security. You get access to our tactical expertise and military support. We get access to your scientific knowledge and trade networks. And the Voxarians? Zorb asked. Martinez smiled, and there was something in that smile that reminded Zorb of predatory species across a dozen worlds. We'll handle the Voxarians. Today was just a sample of what happens when someone raids near human space. The Council representatives exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between species that had worked together for millennia. Finally, the High Chancellor spoke. Your proposal has merit, Captain Martinez. The Council will need to formalize the terms, but in principle, we accept. A cheer went up from the human crew, with Lieutenant Commander Volkov, who had just returned from examining the captured dreadnought, letting out a particularly enthusiastic whoop. Fantastic. Martinez grinned, standing to offer her hand to the High Chancellor. After a moment's hesitation, a tendril extended to meet it. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Indeed, the Chancellor replied, though I confess some concern about how other Council species will react to humanity's unconventional methods. They'll get used to us, Commander Jackson said with a rare smile. Everyone does, eventually. As the formal proceedings concluded, and the gathering devolved into smaller conversations, Admiral Zorb found himself standing beside Martinez at the viewport, looking out at the stars, and at the human vessel docked alongside the captured Voxarian dreadnought, both ships now surrounded by curious Council research vessels. Your ship is called the Reckless Abandon, Zorb observed, an unusual name for a military vessel. Martinez chuckled. It's aspirational, reminds us not to overthink things sometimes. And yet, Zorb said carefully, your actions today were anything but reckless. Your tactical plan was unorthodox, but precisely executed. That's humans for you, she replied with a shrug. We look chaotic from the outside, but there's usually a method to our madness. A frightening concept, Zorb admitted. Many Council species are already expressing concern about humanity's potential influence on galactic politics. Martinez considered this for a moment, then gestured toward the captured Voxarian ship. You know what the difference is between us and the Voxarians. When we show up unannounced with a warship, we bring fidget spinners and coffee as gifts, not particle cannons and boarding parties. A thin distinction, some might say. Maybe, she conceded. But it's an important one. Humanity isn't looking for conquest. We've got enough problems managing our own colonies. We're looking for friends, trading partners, and interesting stories to tell back home. And if those friends are threatened, Martinez's expression hardened slightly, then whoever did the threatening gets to learn why humans are the only species we know of that developed thousands of different ways to say, I'm going to hurt you, and turned warfare into both an art and a science. She softened the statement with a smile, raising her coffee cup in a toast. But today, we're celebrating new friends, not new enemies. Zorb, despite his lingering concerns, found himself raising his own ceremonial chalice in response. As they looked out at the stars together, human and alien, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place, and perhaps paradoxically, a much safer one as well. In the distance, the UNS Reckless Abandon gleamed in the light of an alien sun, bristling with weapons, yes, but also carrying diplomats, scientists, explorers, and apparently an extensive collection of 20th-century rock music. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage. The universe would simply have to adjust.